Hey y'all, Rick Sky here, and I want to post a follow-up review for the Apple Silicon Macs. These are the Apple M1 computers. Now, if you've watched my unboxing videos and my older reviews of the Apple Silicon Macs, you probably found that I purchased both the Mac Mini M1. Now, my Mac Mini M1 is 16 gigs of RAM, which at the time of posting this is the maximum memory option, and one terabyte SSD, which has been more than ample. And then my MacBook Air M1 is the 512 gigs of storage, but only 8 gigs of RAM. And what I want to talk about within this video is what I've noticed while using these two Apple Silicon Macs since they came out. I mean, I ordered these as soon as they came out. Granted, I got the MacBook Air M1 a few weeks later just because it was slower to ship, but I got the Mac Mini M1 somewhat immediately. So, coming from my previous Macs, they were. I mean, I've been using Macs since they were PowerPC, and then they went to Intel. But my previous Mac was a MacBook Pro. It was very well spec'd out. It was a 16-inch. It had the i9. It had 32 gigs of RAM. I mean, it was a beast. But you know what? Both of these smoke it. And that's what I want to talk about within this video is just, I'm not here to be some sort of, Apple fanboy and jazz up. I mean, granted, I've got the purple LED lights under my big desk and all of that. So, I'm trying to look kind of cool. But, I'm not going to sit here and give you those professional camera angles and the sound effects and grow a beard or goatee or something. I mean, I'm just not going to do that. I'm here to tell you what I've noticed while using these two Apple Silicon Macs since they came out. And again, when I say since they came out, this MacBook Air M1 arrived a few weeks after that. But for starters, let's look at the laptop first, the MacBook Air. Coming from an Intel i9 MacBook Pro 16-inch, you put that thing on your lap, especially if you're editing videos, exporting videos, it became blazing hot. It would set your legs and your crotch on fire, man. I mean, not actually on fire. I mean, I never got burned or anything. I don't want you to think that. But it was incredibly hot. And again, that was the most current MacBook Pro 16-inch. So the thermals in that, because of the Intel chip, this thing right here, this MacBook Air M1, I have exported, well, for starters, it's pretty incredible that a somewhat entry-level Mac can smoke the performance of the top-of-the-line Intel i9. So that blew my mind. But the thing that blew my mind even more is that this MacBook Air M1 doesn't seem to get warm at all. I mean, I've edited tons of 4K video. I've exported some 4K videos from this that are, 10-minute long clips. And I've done a couple of them back to back. And I was watching TV, just had it on my lap while I was doing its thing. Didn't even become noticeably warm. So the thermals on the MacBook Air M1 are phenomenal. And let's talk about the next thing that's phenomenal, and that is the battery life. The battery life on this MacBook Air M1 it's mind-blowing. I mean, coming from Intel MacBooks, the battery life on this is mind-blowing. I mean, I could comfortably use this even for tasks like video editing and not really be concerned that I'm away from a power adapter. And that brings me to the next thing. Of course, the power adapter is nice. It's USB-C. So like right now, I'm using a standard, just standard USB-C to USB-C cable, and it's plugged into the back of my Mac Mini to just keep this thing, charged. One of the things that's cool about the MacBook Air M1 is that it conditions itself. It does the charging in a way which will hopefully prolong the battery life. So Apple's put a lot of intelligence into these systems. Would I get if they had a 16-inch or let's say a 14 or 15-inch MacBook Pro, would I get that instead of the MacBook Air M1? Probably not. And the reason being is that now, because of Apple Silicon, the performance of the MacBook Air M1 is just, I mean, it's a beast. And again, this isn't even the spec'd out one. I didn't get 16 gigs of RAM. I only went with 8. And part of the reason I did that is because I didn't have the budget to go. I mean, my Mac Mini is my primary video editing machine. You know, it's my powerhouse. But the Mac Mini M1 was 16 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte hard drive, you know, that I got behind me that's using this monitor. The performance of it in real world use for what I do, video editing in, you know, 4K video in Final Cut Pro 10, exporting those videos using compressor, the real world performance difference between these two, and check out my videos where I show you no nonsense comparisons, the real world performance is not significant at all. So the fact that I went the more budget friendly route with this and only went with 8 gigs of RAM and only went with 512 of storage instead of 1 terabyte, you know, if I only had one Mac, I would definitely go with, you know, with 1 terabyte of SSD. But since I've got two, you know, this MacBook Air M1 is more of my field computer. It's more of, and because of this Corona stuff and all that, I hadn't been in the field as much as I am normally. But this is more than capable of being a primary editing machine for me as well because of the Apple Silicon's performance. So it's not a situation where it's like, man, I'm in the field, you know, I'm just gimping around and getting things done. No, with this is powerful enough when I return to the studio. You know, maybe I don't want to work in the studio where I am right now. You know, maybe I want to work in a different room, or maybe I want to work in, you know, outside. This is powerful enough. This is energy efficient enough to use and not feel like it's a GIMP performance. Sure, the screen size is a little bit smaller, but if you didn't want to get two Macs and you needed portability, man, I would just go, you know, I'd say go with the, you know, the MacBook Air M1. If budget allows, bump it up to 16 gigs, but if it doesn't, you know, just get the 8 gigs like I did, and you'll probably find that it's more than enough. You know, that's another point I'd made previously, and I'll reiterate. The memory, what you're accustomed to within, you know, the Intel world, you know, one would think that you need more RAM. And that was the thing when Apple Silicon first came out. I'm like, man, these things top out at 16 gigs. You know, what's up with that? That's probably not enough. And the reality is that from my experience, 8 gigs feels like 16 on an Intel Mac, and 16 feels like 32 on an Intel Mac. Maybe even more. Maybe it even feels more powerful than that, because my Intel MacBook Pro 16-inch had 32 gigs of RAM. Both of these systems grossly trump the performance of it. So, I mean, this is an incredible technology, and again, I've got two because I've got one, you know, I can just sit down in my studio, and I've got a computer here that's very affordable. Likewise, I've got a very affordable portable. That sounds kind of funny. Very affordable portable that I can carry with me, and both of them just offer phenomenal performance. Now, you know, it makes me question, what is the new iMac going to bring to the table? And obviously, being an Apple fanatic like I am, call me fanboy, call me whatever, inevitably I'm going to get an iMac and put right there, just because the display, even today in the old Intel iMacs, the display is great. I mean, this is a decent monitor right here, but Apple does a really good job with the monitors, and I'll be getting the iMac basically just for the monitor. I mean, the processing power of both of my M1 Macs is more than acceptable, but I'll be getting the iMac just because I want that display. And it goes without saying that the iMac's probably going to come with a processor, with an Apple Silicon processor that's probably even more powerful than these M1s. And I mean, that makes my head spin just thinking about it. You know, how powerful is that going to be? I mean, I'm churning 4K video edits through this thing like a boss, and you know, it's it makes me wonder, you know, when cameras become more affordable, the 8K, 6K, 8K and beyond. I haven't upgraded the channel to 8K yet. I'm still 4K. I think it's more than future-proofed, at least for a few years. I was an early adopter of 4K, though. But I think that, it'll be interesting to see, once those 8K cameras become more affordable and once I upgrade to 8K, how well will 8K video be able to be edited on these M1 Macs. and then how well can 8K video be editing? How well can 8K video be edited on the upcoming, even more powerful iMac with Apple Silicon? So it's a really, really incredible time. If you're on the fence, if you're like, man, should I upgrade to Apple Silicon, dude? Should I upgrade? Should I wait, man? You know what I would do? I'd go ahead and do it, because this grossly trumps the performance of the Intel Macs. And, you know, it's kind of weird, because I was looking back, and I'd only had that, my Intel Mac with 32 gigs of RAM and 2 terabyte SSD. I mean, loaded up, 16 gig MacBook Pro. And, Apple Silicon came out, and I thought Apple Silicon was just going to be like an entry level, somebody that's, surfing the internet and checking their email, that kind of stuff. Maybe loading a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. It turns out it is grossly, unexpectedly, and grossly trumped the performance of all the Intel Macs. And, for that reason, if you've got an older Mac and you're wanting to upgrade, go for the M1. It's more than powerful enough. If you don't have a Mac and you're wanting to enter the Mac ecosystem, start out with the M1. I don't think I would wait for the next iteration of the Apple Silicon chip, because this is more than powerful enough. Now, again, I'm basing those claims upon my use case. I'm here with Irish Guy's Adventure Channel, where you're watching this, youtube.com/IrixGuy. So I edit a ton of 4K video. I do graphics design. That 4K video is heavy lifting. So if you're looking for a workhorse, I mean, these things are a workhorse. The other thing worth mentioning is, a lot of people it's like, well, man, that's not Intel. How long will it take all the applications to be converted to Apple Silicon? Let's see, what on here is not Apple Silicon right now? I think, what do I use? Oh, the ATEM software that I use for my live streaming. Blackmagic has not yet released the Apple Silicon version of that, but it runs the same speed from my observations as it did on the Intel. But what will happen if you have a program that's not yet optimized for Apple Silicon, it'll install a program called Rosetta 2, which emulates it. And from my observations, I've encountered no issues. That's the one piece of software that I have right now that has not yet been converted to Apple Silicon, but it runs perfectly fine. And what's cool within these Macs, you can go into the activity monitor and look at architecture, and that'll tell you which programs, if any, on your Mac are Intel emulated versus Apple Silicon native. So it's these things are game changing, man. I mean, just to recap, and I know I've rambled. I'm not the guy sitting here trying to give you all the cool camera angles and all. And I mean, nothing wrong with that. I mean, you put a lot of pride into your work, and you do the professional edits and the professional lighting and this, that, and the other. That's fine. All power to you. But I'm just trying to share with you my no nonsense observations after using Apple Silicon since launch. Again, I got the Mac Mini M1 immediately, and then I got the MacBook Air M1 a few weeks later. Because see, my original plan when I got the Mac Mini M1 is that, well, if the performance of this is lackluster, I've still got my Intel MacBook Pro, and it became immediately apparent that the Mac Mini M1 grossly trumped the performance of the Intel MacBook Pro. So I knew I was sitting on a paperweight. Talking about the Intel MacBook Pro at that point. So, that's what led me to an entry level. And this isn't the most entry level MacBook Air, but it's somewhat entry level because it only has 8 gigs. But I did bump this from 256 storage to 512 gig storage because I needed at least 512. Optimally, I would probably want 1 terabyte. But again, this is primarily my field computer. And, even if it was my primary computer, 512 would probably be fine because I could just store my large video files on just a cheap external USB hard drive, or store it on a SAN, a network connected drive. So I mean, it's this is the future, and I was nervous at first Well, I was nervous, number one, way back when Apple said they were going from PowerPC to Intel. But I was particularly nervous when Apple said, "Oh, we're going to go back from, we're going to step back into our own silicon," which is great. I mean, you can't beat RISC architecture. I mean, you know, OS 10 is Unix. You know, this is a rock solid operating system, and this is just, it's a whole new ball game. So if you're on the fence about the MacBook, you know, getting a, I don't know if you're going with MacBook Pro or MacBook Air. If you were deciding between those two, I would go with the Air just because it's smaller, it's lighter. And to be frank, I've handled, I don't own one, but I've handled a few of the 13-inch M1 MacBook Pros. They're heavier. The design is not as good. I love the minimalist, you know, profile of this MacBook Air M1. And this doesn't have a fan. So it's basically 100% silent. I mean, you may hear a little bit buzzing while it's working, but I mean, it's very, very quiet. Now, the Mac Mini M1 does have a fan, but it's super quiet. So, I mean, this tech is just, it has blown my mind. And I would definitely buy it again. Speaking of that, if you're shopping, regardless of which Mac you're shopping for, expand this video's description and then click the link there and you can find them all there. And, you know, I'm thrilled to be posting this video because I think that follow-up reviews are more important than the first impressions, than the initial impressions. And, you know, and my follow-up opinions of Apple Silicon after using it for, you know, since it came out is there's nothing negative I can say about it. I mean, it's, you know, from day one when I got it, yeah, there were a few apps day one that weren't Apple Silicon optimized, but they still ran. Now, like I said, everything I've got except for ATEM software control that I use to control my ATEM Mini Pro, it's emulated, but it still runs fine. So, yeah, I mean, it's slick. And I've even got Microsoft Office now on here that's Apple Silicon enhanced, which is pretty amazing that Microsoft would make their that would optimize their software for Apple Silicon that quickly. But I guess they have a large user base that run Macs and want to buy their software. So who knows? Tell me what you think within the comment section below, and thanks for watching this video. Check out all my other MacBook Air M1 videos and also my Mac Mini M1 videos. I've got a lot of tests where I'm editing and exporting videos, and it's so great, man. It's like using the future, man. The future of computing technology, dude. It's like that. It really is. So appreciate your viewership. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell icon when you do, and that'll notify you whenever I post another video. And again, if you're shopping for any of these Apple Silicon Macs, expand this video's description and then click the link there. And most importantly, y'all have a good day. Appreciate your viewership, and consider becoming a member of this channel. If you want to subscribe, that's awesome. But if you want to join, get a channel membership, that's even more awesome. So y'all have a good day. Hey y'all, Captain Irix Guy here. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to subscribe. It's youtube.com/Irix Guy. And ring that bell icon when you do to be notified whenever I post another video. Thanks for your viewership, and y'all have a good day.